On today's show, the latest injury update on Giannis and how he's tracking after some further evaluation in the post game after a game one loss for the Bucks. Also, some numbers, particularly defensively, about what went wrong for this team in the first game of the series. And Defensive Player of the Year was announced. Not great news if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Let's get into all that and plenty more.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN, writing solo today. And I just said you can find me Monday to Friday on this show, but I wasn't here for the post game, so we have to send a big shout out to our good friend and regular on the podcast, Justin Garcia, for taking the hosting duties and putting up the post-game pod alongside Frank Madden. So if you missed that show, go back and check it out for the instant reaction after the Bucks lose Game 1 to the Miami Heat and continue a trend of not great performances in Game 1 under Mike Budenholzer. More on that in just a little bit. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That's Game Time. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every weekday and on the weekends during the postseason for post-game shows. We appreciate the support. Make sure, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, because there might be some different shows that drop over the course of the next few weeks. It's going to be hopefully a fun ride over the next 2 months, even though it wasn't the best start for the Bucks. So we appreciate the support. I loved reading through all the comments. It was weird for me because I didn't do the show. So it was good to see all your reaction and comments there after Game 1. If you haven't done so yet, drop a comment, a like, and subscribe. As I said, do a review. If you're on the old school audio platform, it's free to do so, and it really helps. This is Locked On Bucks, your team every day. So let's start with Giannis and the injury update that came out of practice today. We will have another update tomorrow. So now that it's the postseason, there'll be media every single day, and we'll be able to get the latest as it comes. But certainly some good news. But here's just an overall recap, and grab this little bit here from The Athletic. So he is believed to be dealing with pain tolerance issue in his lower back after he landed hard on his backside with 4:13 to play in the first quarter. Mike Budenholzer told reporters on Sunday that x-rays came back clear. He also added that the MRI that Giannis underwent on Sunday night came back clean as well. So clean x-rays, clean MRI. And he's also dealing with, as we know, which we've tried to bring up semi-regularly here, but he is dealing with a ligament issue in his wrist as well. So, look, we totally understand Giannis at the moment is banged up, and he's been banged up for a while. And then you consider on top of that the knee soreness that he carries through. So it's good and bad news. The last thing I think anyone wanted was Giannis to pick up another ailment on top of everything else that he's dealing with in the first game of the postseason, when you're hoping that you've got a big run ahead of you. But if it comes down to purely pain tolerance, we've said this before, there's no way of quantifying this, but it is my belief that we are dealing with the toughest player in the NBA with his ability to play through injuries, play through pain, particularly when it gets to this end of the season and the postseason. So, based on that and based on the reporting that we've got and what Mike Budenholzer said at practice, it seems like Giannis is probably going to be okay to go for Game 2. Again, we'll wait and see what happens tomorrow. We'll hold our breath. Either way, it's absolutely not ideal. And big picture, yes, the Bucks are down 1-0, but if they don't get Giannis back, they're going to be in serious, serious trouble. I've seen a lot of people suggest that the Bucks might be able to beat the Heat without Giannis. I'm not sure that I'm in that camp. They desperately need him. Everyone understands that health is the biggest determining factor in the postseason of how teams can have success and how teams can get utterly derailed. And so we'll hold our breath on Giannis. But more big picture when it comes to the charge. And we did have a couple of comments in the YouTube stream suggesting that, this was a dirty play from Kevin Love. And I think it's interesting. And I've said it before on this podcast. I'm probably, and I don't know whether I'm Australian and I've grown up with different sports and those types of things. I'm not sure whether I'm willing to call these charge attempts dirty. but I am willing to call him dangerous. It's a dangerous act. We saw another one tonight just a few minutes ago as I was watching the Sacramento Kings and Golden State Warriors with a Sabonis kind of sliding in under Steph Curry. Fortunately, he didn't hit the deck in any type of way that injured him. We saw Ja Morant go down and hurt his wrist. In the past, we've seen Steph Curry break his wrist going down in a similar fashion. I think that was Aaron Baines when he was playing for Phoenix back then, and that completely derailed the Warriors season. So I don't exactly know what the solution is, but we've been calling for this for a while, and maybe it's because we are so sensitive to it because we watch Giannis on a nightly basis. But these are really easy calls to try and eradicate from the game. If you want to slide in underneath someone, it should be an automatic block. If someone's in the air, they're as vulnerable as they're going to be on the basketball floor. They are so easy to manipulate in the air when they're flying in to finish. And I don't think if you want what's best for the game, you should be deterring players from attacking the rim and either trying to throw down a dunk or trying to finish spectacularly like we see Giannis do so often. So you want those types of plays in the game. And what you don't want is guys sliding underneath players and leaving them in an extremely vulnerable state and opening themselves up to a possible injury. Now, if that was an automatic block call, the thing is it's not going to make Bucks fans feel any better if Giannis still hurts himself and you get a block call on a couple of free throws, which he took anyway. That doesn't make anyone feel better. I don't know what the solution would be. Is it a flagrant foul? Can you bring that in? Is that too harsh to change a rule that has been there for as long as time? Do you make it that you can't take charges at all in the paint? Is that something you could do? Would that eradicate this situation? I think it probably would. I'm not a big fan of the charge call at all, but I think it definitely needs to be looked at because when you're looking at game ones of the postseason and you've got two superstars of the game going down with injuries because of people sliding underneath them to try and take a charge, I think that is enough for the league to seriously look at this and say, this isn't what we want moving forward. We want our best players on the floor. We want our best players attacking the basket and having these guys. Again, I don't think it's a dirty play. It's trying to make a play defensively that at the moment is legal. But I think that the smart move to be moving forward would be to eradicate those types of charge calls, make them illegal, and get that out of the game before we have more injuries. And then we're sitting here watching the postseason without the best players on the floor because of something that's a ridiculous defensive play that to me isn't really playing defense. It's just kind of dangerous. So I hope the league looks at it. I hope Giannis is fine for game 2, and I hope that the Bucks can continue to move forward here because losing the Bucks' best player, a 2-time MVP, a Finals MVP, because of something like that is frustrating for sure. Again, not personally attacking Kevin Love or the players that do this because for now it's legal. I don't think they're going out there and intentionally trying to hurt Giannis. I do not believe that, but I think that we need to get rid of it in the game, and I would like to see it gone if possible because it's pretty sickening when you see someone like Giannis go down to the floor as he did and hit the deck as hard as he did. All right, let's get into some of the defensive numbers next. And I also want to talk about Defensive Player of the Year before this show wraps up because disappointing for Brook Lopez. I thought he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. But first, let's talk about game time. And this is the time of year, particularly for basketball fans. You're trying to find tickets. I've been there before. You're trying to get the last-second ticket and a last-second deal. And sometimes you know that this deal isn't fair. You're getting ripped off. That's not going to happen with Game Time because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you will have. There's flash deals on last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy whatever event you're looking for. And they also have the seat view, which is what I love. You get to see the tickets you're buying and the view you're going to have at the game. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and the redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I actually had the benefit. Well, I say the benefit. It actually wasn't a benefit, but I knew the result when I watched this game. I was traveling, which is why I wasn't able to do the post-game show again, shout out to the great man Justin for taking care of that. From the arena, mind you, as well. That is a man that put in some work yesterday, which we absolutely appreciate. But when I saw that the Bucks lost and I saw that they gave up 130 points, I really did think back to the podcast I did last week talking about the Milwaukee Bucks defense, about how they'd cut down on giving up threes. And just looking at the score total of 130 points, I thought to myself, well, gee, they must have given up a ton of threes in this game. Now, Miami shot the ball really, really well, but they only attempted 25 threes, which is a pretty remarkable number to attempt 25 threes and put up 130. So the first thing I did was go to the tracking data and have a look at what type of threes they were getting. Now, if you're only giving up 25 threes in a game, I think generally for a team that has some trouble with the three-point defense, you look at the raw total, you look at the raw number, and you don't feel too bad about it. 21 of the 25 threes they gave up were considered open via NBA.com tracking data. 3 of the 4 were tightly contested, and 4 attempts were tightly contested, and they hit 3 of those. So overall, this was just a really hot shooting night for the Heat. But the problem was their ability to get too deep into the paint. And this isn't entirely a new problem for the Bucks. Bam Adebayo was a guy to me that I looked at because he was able to be a guy that not only was comfortable shooting those mid-range jumpers with Brook Lopez giving him space. This is something that we've seen before, though, and the Bucks have had some decent success with it. But on this day, he was able to knock them down. He was 10 for 18 from the floor. Didn't obviously shoot any shots from the outside, the 22 points. But he was also able to facilitate because once the defense did collapse a little bit, he was able to find different guys. And if you look at the shot chart overall for Miami, as I pull it up on the screen here, look how many shots are coming in the paint. And it's not necessarily all the way at the rim. The Bucks obviously gave up some points down there, but all those dots, whether they made those shots or they were missing them around the free throw area, that is really problematic for the Bucks, and I think that that's where the biggest adjustment is going to come for this team. Now, it might come at the expense of giving up a few more threes, and I'll be fascinated to see how that shot profile changes for the Miami Heat in the next game. But I think we've seen this time and time again with this Bucks team, and I've been one of the biggest Mike Budenholzer defenders around because I do think that he's an excellent coach. I think that he gets an extremely bad rap from Milwaukee Bucks fans despite what he's been able to do. But the one thing I would say is I think as a rule, this Bucks team, and maybe the players are a little bit a part of this as well as a veteran team, they generally don't panic. They don't appear to get too stressed out about anything. But I would say that they're probably more reactive than proactive. And most of the time, I understand why that's the case. If you've got the best record in the NBA, if you've got a top 5 defense and an offense that has been trending up all season long, you're not going to come into game 1 of the postseason and try anything crazy. You're going to do what you do best. And the team that's the underdog might say, okay, well, we understand how the Bucks are going to play, but how can we pick them apart? And then from there, we've seen the Bucks generally adjust. It's a pretty wild game 1 record. And when we were speaking about the series against Boston last year, and I said to Frank that when the Bucks won game 1, I was genuinely surprised and genuinely stunned that they won that game on the road. And a big part of that was just the fact that they don't win game 1s. They've now played 12 game 1s under Mike Budenholzer since he came to the Bucks. They have a 5-7 record. It is unbelievable. It doesn't even make sense, but they are 5-1 in those series overall. So they've only lost after losing game 1 on one occasion under Mike Budenholzer. So they're typically able to adjust, but that defense and particularly the depth that the Heat were able to get, Jimmy Butler was the same getting into the free throw line area. I think probably the most fascinating part of Giannis leaving this game early, because I was listening to Justin and Frank on yesterday's podcast talk about the matchups that Jimmy was able to get to. And he was awesome in this game, obviously with 35 points and just really, really efficient. 27 shot attempts. And he only attempted 1 3. So 26 2-pointers. So as I referenced Bam Adebayo and his comfort level getting to that free throw line and below, Jimmy Butler was exactly the same. I heard the guys talking about that. But if we remember why we discussed that the Bucks we thought were a decent matchup for Miami is because we saw when the Bucks did sweep them a couple of years ago, it was Giannis that really snuffed out Jimmy Butler on the offensive end. Now, if he's going to play this game, are the Bucks going to want to hold Giannis back, look after that back, and not put him through defending the best player on the floor for Miami and Jimmy Butler? time will tell. And that is another little wrinkle to this series, because certainly based on what we saw in game one, the Bucks are going to have some trouble slowing down Jimmy Butler if it's not Giannis. But maybe there was some rust after the 10-day break. Maybe it is the Bucks again easing their way into the series. I think if you're a Bucks fan, you're tired of this easing your way into a series. Let's just get a 1-zip lead and roll through a series stress-free. That's obviously not going to be the case now. And regardless of how you feel about the Bucks winning this series still against Miami, and I think they should be still heavy favorites. I think that, particularly if Giannis plays, in addition to the loss of Tyler Hero for Miami, the Bucks are still, favorite. They're going to be favorite to win this series. But you're going to have some anxiety going into game two, because you do not want to fall in a 2-zip hole. We know the Bucks have dug their way out of that a couple of times before, but doing it with home court and then heading on the road, you're going to be in a very, very difficult position there. The other point I wanted to make, and it just makes me feel a little bit stressed out, and that is the three-point shooting for this team. 11 for 45. So they've been shooting the ball really well over the last couple of months of the season. They've won a whole bunch of games. Again, was it a little bit of an earlier tip-off plus a 10-day break? We'll see. But please, for goodness sake, make some threes in the next game, in game two at home, and level this thing up, because 11 for 45, they were -4 in makes from three, despite being +20 in attempts. And some of the guys that have been red hot over the last little stretch here just weren't able to get it done. Bobby Portis, 0 for 5. Jay Crowder, who even he's been knocking down threes. He was over 40%, only a small sample size, but he was 0 for 4. Javon Carter, only 0 for 2 in this game, and only took 4 shots in 22 minutes. I saw a little bit of frustration about one of the pull-up threes he took in this game. Look, I said for weeks, Javon Carter, I think, is going to have a game where we might even lead the podcast with Javon and say, how good was he? He was 4 for 5 from 3, brought that instant offense, that three-point shooting that the Bucks need. But I also said there's going to be a podcast where fans will be frustrated that his shot selection, when he's not hitting them, feels like it's come at inopportune times and really, really a setback for the team. Well, unfortunately, we saw it in game one of the postseason. So I've got faith in Javon Carter to bounce back and to be a little bit more aggressive offensively. The only guys that could knock down threes, really, Joe Ingles, 3 for 7 on the night there, and Grayson Allen was 2 for 4, which is nice to see him knock down a couple of threes, but there were some defensive issues there, with Joe and Jay and all these guys that are playing on the wing and potentially might spend some time on Jimmy Butler. But the three-point shooting, if you came into the playoffs and said that this was one of your biggest concerns, I asked all you listeners out there, I'm sure game one hasn't helped your mood with how you're feeling about this team. All right, I want to get to Defensive Player of the Year next, and the voting and everything went down. If you happened to miss that yesterday, because I do think Brook Lopez should have been Defensive Player of the Year. So we're going to get into that next after I talk about Prize Picks, longtime sponsor of the podcast and our good friends there. And you might have to wait and see the availability for Giannis in the next game if you want to take the over on the points or the rebounds or all those things that he usually chucks up there on the box score. Chris Middleton, what's he going to do? Is he going to have a big offensive night again? But all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players. And if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Doesn't have to be NBA, by the way. It can be baseball, can be hockey, all these other sports, golf, college sports, everything that you can get your eyes on, you can do it there. Esports even. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter the code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's Prize Picks. Thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. And we're dealing with some everydayers here. That's who we want to highlight here over the next few months. The everyday listeners, because this is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And for the everydayers that are going to join us again tomorrow, I won't be solo. A tease, there will be a guest with me. We'll have someone else, a co-host, and we'll be able to sink our teeth into the preview for Bucks and Heat Game 2. If you've got any questions for us on the preview show, drop them in the YouTube comments, drop a like while you're there, and subscribe, and we'll read out some of those questions on tomorrow's show. This is Locked On Bucks, and we appreciate all your support. Let's get to the Defensive Player of the Year, though, now, and I'll pull up the voting straight away. We'll waste no time. So Jaren Jackson Jr. from Memphis wins. 391 total points. He had 56 first-place votes. Brook Lopez, who was a favorite for the last couple of months of the season, then Jaren Jackson Jr. seemed to get some more momentum in the media. Not really sure why. He's obviously had a fantastic season, but I'm not sure what Brook Lopez did to lose momentum. But 56 first-place votes for Triple J, 31 first-place votes for Brook, and then Brook Lopez had obviously more second-place votes and third-place votes. 309 points overall, so 391 to Jackson Jr., 309 to Brook Lopez. So he wasn't too far away. There was a significant gap down to Evan Mobley. The interesting thing is Giannis and also Drew Holiday picked up some votes here. No first-place votes, but second and third-place votes for those two players. And I think overall that became an argument for why Jaren Jackson Jr. was going to win this, because the Bucks obviously had some other contenders that were there. I've been pretty strong all season. Now, I'm not saying that Giannis isn't the best individual defender on this team. I'm not saying that Drew Holiday isn't the best individual defender on this team. But for consistency, for night to night, what Brook Lopez brought to this team with the rim protection, I thought this season, on a nightly basis, when you consider the availability and playing 78 games, Brook Lopez was the best defender on this team. And in my opinion, biased or not, I thought he should have been the Defensive Player of the Year when you consider what this team was able to do through adversity, through Giannis missing almost 20 games, Drew Holiday missing time, Chris Middleton only playing 30 games, Joe Ingles coming back late, different injury concerns and issues that they had throughout. At the start of the season, Brook Lopez was absolutely monstrous defensively. Offensively, he was big at the end, but the rim protection just stayed there. I thought he was the best defender in the league. And the other thing that just stands out to me, we talk about games played and what it matters. And you can say that this is pretty selective by me, and maybe it is. But I don't think that the games played should matter in the MVP because they were all so close. I think Jokic was around 68, 69 games. Embiid were around 65, 66. Giannis, 63. So there was only 5 games between those guys. But I do think when you look at the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. played 63 games and Brook Lopez played 78, I think that should really matter. And I don't think that should have been overlooked. We talk about what the CBA is bringing to the awards potentially in the future in terms of, 65 games being a minimum to win awards. 15 extra games for Brook Lopez. It's not that far off a quarter of a season. He played more for this team. I've heard Marcus Johnson talk about your statistical leaders, whether it's your points leader being points per game versus total points, blocks with total blocks versus blocks per game, those types of things. I think it does matter, and the raw numbers should count for something. And if it was only a handful of games, fine. I don't care too much over the course of 80 games, but 15 games difference for me is significant enough for me to think that should have counted, and Brook Lopez probably should have been Defensive Player of the Year. But I'll tell you what, I say it all the time with all these awards, and I'll say it for the MVP if Giannis doesn't pick up MVP, which it doesn't look like he's going to. It looks like it's going to be Joel Embiid. If the Bucks win a title, that's all I really care about. So hopefully Giannis is healthy for Game 2 and the Bucks are able to roll on. All right. As I said a few minutes ago, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we'll absolutely be back tomorrow. I'll have someone with me. Preview for Game 3 against the Miami Heat. Make sure you drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe, rate, review, all those things. The subscribers are on the rise. I wanted to get to 7K by the postseason. Unfortunately, didn't quite get there, but we will get there by the end of the postseason. I have full faith. So thanks for joining us today. We will be back tomorrow. Normally, I'd think it was a weird thing and not a great thing that the Bucks have a few days off before Game 2, but given the health status of Giannis, maybe it is a nice thing for the Bucks. So we'll have another update from practice tomorrow on the show. We'll catch you guys then.